Good afternoon, sunflowers, and welcome to Good Journeys Tarot. This is 78 cards in 78 weeks, and I had no idea it was daylight savings time today. So I'm sure that many of you are catching up on your sleep or getting a late start. So I will forgive you for watching the playback because I almost wasn't here myself. It's totally thanks to our guest today that I actually knew I was losing sleep. Today's card that we're going to be talking about is the Three of Wands, our card of many, many things, hence the varied interpretations and imagery that we see from various decks. Teresa Reed compares it with the two, which for me, for a long time, was a source of confusion because they are very similar. Both are holding their little wands and staring out over the ocean. But here's the main thing that I want to tell you about these cards that I've learned before introducing our guest today, and that is that in this one, they are still at home, right? They are in their domain, so to speak, making plans for world domination. And in this one, they are actually out in the world. They're actually down by the water, and they now are sending out their ships or seeing their ships come in. So there is actually progress on the plans that we see here. But there are a lot of other ideas that go on here, and we're going to be talking about those today with the lovely Kate Mura from Group Tarot. Welcome, Kate.
Hello. I love that you call your watchers your sunflowers. I think that's so
Yeah.
sweet.
Oh, yes, I love sunflowers, and they brighten my day. So,
That's
just like
perfect.
my viewers.
So I presume that sunflowers have been in the sun are quite prevalent in your sun card then if you love sunflowers.
Oh, yeah. Well, I tend not to like sun cards that do not include sunflowers, though surprisingly, when we did the sun card, there were a number that actually spoke to me without sunflowers. So,
Yeah,
yes.
there we go.
So, we're talking about the Three of Wands, which you said is one of your favorites, huh?
It is. It is one of my favorite cards. It
Yes.
is.
So, tell me what makes it one of your favorite cards.
So you were holding up the Rider-Waite Smith version. And there it is. And one of the things that when I was first learning this card, I was like, why is the water yellow? And that got me in a really lovely conversation with my teacher at the time, Matthew Ellenwood. Um, And so for me, a huge root of the Three of Wands is looking at your place, like where you are in the world, with radical honesty and being like, that water is not supposed to be yellow, but it's yellow. So now we have to figure out why that water is yellow. Is it pollution? Is it something wrong with my eyes? Is it a strange reflection of the light? But if we to be able to move forward in our energetic and our spiritual and our artistic paths, if we're not really honest with ourselves, our path can't then like be clear going forward because some part of us is lying to ourselves.
And that's actually one of the ideas. I don't know if you're familiar with this book, The Tarot Dictionary and Compendium
I am
by Jenna Riley. It basically gives a paragraph from a lot of different famous people, like Mary Kay Greer and Aleister Crowley and Pamela Eakins, a bunch of others. And Angelus Arian actually talks about spiritual integrity and honesty as a source of this card. I found this book particularly interesting with cards like this one, where I see so many different interpretations of the card. And in fact, everyone says something different about it. And which, for someone starting out to study the tarot, when I first saw these cards, that was confusing to me.
That's fair.
And
That's very
now, as I've studied through all of the cards and I've studied the tarot for much longer, I'm beginning to see that there's a lot of nuance. The cards have a lot of different meanings based on all of their symbolism, all of their correspondence, and what other cards come up around them.
yeah, totally.
Oh,
I
yeah.
will say that one of the pieces that has the one of the pieces of the 3 of Wands that I have seen to be a through line in all of the decks, despite their myriad of, like, different, like, different depictions, like, so different.
Absolutely. Oh, wow.
So different.
So
Um,
none of these are decks that I actually have. So what do
ah,
you know the names of these
so
decks?
this 3 of Wands grayscale is the Lua Tarot,
Okay.
by Marie Bento. This, 3 of Wands with, um, 3 people, all getting ready to go off along the way, is Wise Fool Tarot by Kate Burkhammer. Um, this is one of my newest decks, Tarot Neocolonial de las Americas by, I'm totally reading the box here so that I get the creator's name correct,
Sure.
Patrick McGraw Munoz. I hope I said your name correctly, friend. Um, this is Emily Carding's Tarot of the She. And what Emily has done is shift rods to warriors. Emily's done that for all of the suits, though. Dancers are cups, um, builders are pentacles, and dreamers are swords
Okay.
in that deck.
Yeah, I actually had some that involved that collaboration as
Yes, I
well. This
love
is the
that
card
deck.
that I thought of as soon as I saw that one. Was of the politic from the Spirit Keepers Tarot,
Yeah.
and this idea of collaboration, which showed up
Oh,
in the Slow Tarot as well,
oh,
uh, which is just gorgeous. Um, and I never really thought about collaboration until I was studying the card this week. This card actually has the ships in there,
yep,
and I realized, oh well, they're not. This person can't sail the boats and do all of the work. They have to have help.
yep.
And
You have to
that's
have
an
the crew.
idea
The bigger
that
the ship, the bigger the crew.
that comes up from the Tarot de Marseille, that idea of collaboration. And
Mm,
in The Way of Tarot by Jodorowsky, he talks
uh-huh.
about how in the Marseille, the three come together in a point
Mhm.
where we're basically trying to invade the world. We're trying to make our mark on the world right there, center our ideas. And to me, that kind of goes back to Crowley's thoughts on the card, which are about how, and I'll have to read that too, or I'll get it wrong.
Oh,
Uh,
go I don't know a whole lot about Crowley in terms of the deck. I know more about Crowley as a historical figure, so
right. Yes, he wrong page. That's why I'm having trouble finding it.
Mhm.
So basically, the ace, two, and three of wands, he considers the base of the tree of life. That's pretty much where, the idea of energy coming in and then being manifest.
So,
And
putting all 3 of those in Malkut or Malkut,
um,
uh
well, not really in Malkuth, but just basically the ideas,
oh, okay.
they are to form the tree of life. Here's how Lon Milo Duquette described it. He said, along with the aces and twos, the other two cards representing the supernal triad of the tree of life, Crowley holds all the threes in particular veneration. The aces are the unmanifest roots of their element and suit. The twos represent the element and suit manifested as ideas. But with the threes, Crowley argues the idea has become fertilized. The triangle has been formulated. In each case, the idea is of a certain stability which can never be upset, from which a child can issue. And
Mhm.
it reminds me of this idea of the great work, right? And since the wands are all about your passion, that thing that you really desire and that
Yeah.
you really want to see happen and manifest, that the two and then the three. And now I'm looking at what Crowley had to say about the aces and thinking, yeah, these three cards really speak to that movement towards your great work. You have that spark of your passion, which is then developed through your ideas and your planning, and then is beginning to see manifest in the three. Of
Mhm.
course, you're only going to achieve that through honesty and collaboration with
Yeah.
others.
Yeah, yeah,
When
yeah.
we look at all of these other decks, so
And the stability point, one of the reasons why I love threes so much is that the triangle is our first stable shape. It is the first one that doesn't teeter-totter in a way that it is the first shape that can literally stand on its own 3 legs, and that, like, that beginning foundation is important.
right. Yeah, I think that was the reason that they had the person here in this three of wands and the curious travel standing on this hand. There is support, there is stability,
Mm.
um, as they're looking out there.
The the fact that the fingers grow up like trees is like, "Woo!"
Yeah, I
That's
guess we were
like
wanting them to look like wands, and this is a deck which doesn't have a guidebook with it. It was an indie deck. It's
uh-huh.
being published by US Games, so hopefully there'll be a guidebook that will explain some of her choices and her ideas behind the imagery.
Yeah, like
When you said about the triangle and its stability, I immediately
mhm,
thought, okay, yes, that
mm,
totally makes sense.
yeah,
Holding up, supporting
yeah.
there in that one.
Mm. With that particular, uh, card, there's some like, those pointy fingers, like, there's some danger there. There's some, like, willingness to protect, like, I just am feeling so, like, claw-like looking at that. Like, there was it was such a fat that particular what's the name of the illustrator for that deck?
This is the Curious Travels, and it is by a Instagram user called Azreer. I think. Let me find, where did they put it? Oh goodness,
Curious.
I'll have to put it in the chat later or email you about it. But because the deck is not in the box,
Yeah,
of course, it's in a Kelly bag.
yeah.
So, but yeah, to me, those fingers actually give this idea of transformation, which some people associate with
Oh,
this card,
yeah,
because there
yeah.
is transformation through accomplishment and
Mhm.
achievement. And for example, in the transient light, that's depicted as a dream catcher, i.e., weaving your own path, your own future,
Yeah.
making things happen for yourself. The Pocket of Peers talks about that a little bit, as well as that foresight into the future, because it's not just enough to have reached this point of accomplishment, but you're still looking out to what's to come and
Yeah.
what's
Well,
to be manifested.
and at this point in the journey, like, the threes, uh, yes, there has been manifestation because, as you said, like, in many depictions of the two, they're inside and they're, like, on some sort of structure, and then in the three, they are out into the world, so there is that sense of travel, um, but it's first steps. It's not like
Right. Yes.
the
Yes. There's still
structure.
a ways to go.
Yeah, there's
We
still
have 10 cards in there.
Exactly,
Al-
exactly.
Although, some tarot readers look at it as nearing the end of the cycle. Like in 78 Degrees of Wisdom, Rachel Pollack talks about the cards from the 10 down to the ace, and approaches them that way. And I think it's interesting when you look at the cards in conjunction with one another, depending on what you can actually go both directions on the journey.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you do see that, it's
Yeah,
like I get to the point where I've done the world card and yes, I'm on top of the world, but then I end up in a Four of Cups space where I'm ignoring
yeah,
everything around me, right? So,
totally. Totally, totally. And we jump around, that's part of the beauty of the cards. We jump around in the cards all the time.
yeah. Yeah, this was
Oh,
another idea of transformation associated with Three of Wands from the Mystic Garbage
well, that's
Tarot.
beautiful.
Yeah. So let's
Breaking out of
see.
that chrysalis.
Yeah, I guess what's confusing for some people is the varied meanings that we can see. Um, this is the Tarot of the Twirling Hands. It talks about progress and opportunity, which is kind of what you were just talking about. We have made progress. There has been some manifestation, but there's still opportunity for growth, for expansion, to move forward. But then some people still include with that idea of future plans, which I mentioned earlier, makes it begin to get a little muddy with the two, because the two was for me all about the planning to
Oh,
get to the
interesting.
three. But now that I've studied it more in depthly and from so many different perspectives, I can look at it and go, okay, it's about the future plans, right? It wasn't enough just to plan to get from the two to the three. We still have to get to the 10
Yeah.
if we really want to get to the 10 and the
If we
one.
really want to get to the 10. Which, and and for me, I think of it more, I have to think of it even a little like further of want to get to the royal, because the 10 of wands is so often, um yes, the end of a cycle, but burnout. And I don't in fact want to be burned out, especially with some of my creative endeavors,
Mhm.
like the book, like the performance adaptation I'm currently working on of Mary K. Greer's Women of the Golden Dawn, Rebels and Priestesses. I don't want to burn out on
Right.
that. Like, I want to get this adaptation to the royals of fire, rather, So, um,
Yeah.
it's interesting to think about what we create as anchor points for those future plans that we have. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
There are some other ideas that came up with some of the cards in my collection.
Mhm.
The the Lightworkers deck by Grace Callis of Tarot Skills uses the keyword notable growth. So that idea that we are growing, we are moving forward, even if we're not there yet. But then a couple of them actually went with the idea of travel and exploration. I guess that boats that are in the original, the
Mhm.
Smith Waite version, kind of lend itself that way. This is the Out of Hand Tarot by Jamie Sawyer. And then here we have the New Era Elements, which is called Exploration, uh,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
use the space shuttle. But there's also an idea in many decks of preparation, particularly in decks
Yeah,
that are
definitely.
more. Some of the decks that I have referenced are more. I don't know if the word is primitive or primal, I guess, the imagery, but here is the bone stone and earth flesh, as this person is prepared to be a part of their community and tribe.
Oh, so it
And
says
then,
initiation in that one. Hmm.
yeah, initiation, yeah. And then here there's this whole discussion in the Saucer of Beto about putting together the campsite, to prepare for um, what's to come. And here in the Wildwood, fulfillment. So there is a sense of accomplishment. That's a word that comes up a lot with many of the books that I've read is accomplishment, but then at the same time, that sense of there's more to be done
Yeah,
that you
absolutely.
talked about. So,
And still one of the through lines in each of the cards that I'm looking at, as well as each of the cards that I've been watching you share, is that sense of reflection, of taking in your world and surroundings and seeing them for what they are, and um and looking at yourself honestly, and like seeing who and what you are in that building. And um it it's interesting to see that piece of the through line in all of these decks, even as they're, raising up other aspects of travel and collaboration and ritual. Yeah, there's so many lovely layers
absolutely.
to delve into, building on the Gregor of um, history and her story and our story with the tarot, and all of the unique artists' visions. And
Yeah, another idea that comes up, and this is thanks to the Golden Dawn's title of the card, which is establish strength.
mm,
And Wade actually embraced that term in his pictorial key for this card. That there has been some accomplishment. You have established yourself at this point in some way. And that's really depicted here in the Lost Hollow Tarot in the way that they've raised their wand there
mm,
as that established strength. But you'll note it also has the keyword virtue at the bottom, which is the keyword from the Thoth. This
mhm,
this deck attempts to merge the two, the Smith
mhm.
and the Crowley, into kind of and I find I really like those types of decks. I feel like that Wade got some things right and Crowley got some things right, and there's a space in between where maybe they work better.
I love
But
that.
which is why I love the Spirit Keepers Tarot and the Lost Hollow Tarot, and also this deck, the Urban Tarot, which is by
I love looking at the Urban Tarot, but it is not one that speaks to me as a reader. And I love hearing people talk about it because I think it is, I'm pretty sure that that's the deck that they talk about in Queering the Tarot, which is a book I
yes, she does
absolutely
use
love and
this
adore,
imagery.
and
Mhm.
wish that I had had that book when I was first starting out.
Yes, it's
But
an amazing book. Um, and
yes.
she does use this deck, which is interestingly, she leans more towards the Smith Waite interpretation of the cards. But
Yeah.
these cards actually often appear more Thoth than Smith Waite, though it's kind of a merger of the two.
Mhm.
And in this case, a lot of these cards are based in New York and things that
Yep.
happened there. And so in this case, it was about firefighters.
Yeah.
There's a sense of accomplishment becoming a firefighter, but also of collaboration, and the whole idea of firefighters being equated with the fire suit,
Mhm.
and that type of thing. But the story that she talks about with this one is about this is a specific truck. This was the first truck that arrived at the towers of 9/11, and none of that company actually survived. So they actually, you know, um, they gave all, they put themselves out there honestly to help other people, and collaborated together. And so I do love this deck. I don't read with it a lot myself, but I love the imagery and I like studying it. My biggest problem with it is the size of the cards, which gets to be more and more of a problem as I get older.
You
Yeah.
know, one I have I didn't, take it out, but I will since we're talking about larger deck cards that I have. This is um, Cirque de Tarot by 78 artists, and
Mhm.
it, it's just too big for my hands. I love it. I love it for being able to see the art really well. And I'll since I'm pulling it out now, I'll see about finding the Three of Wands for us to add it in. Excuse me, into the mix. But when I'm shuffling this one, I either am always, hand over hand, or I'll sort of do a side corner shuffle sort of thing,
Mhm.
which, it works all right, and it's lovely in many, especially when I'm reading for like theater events or more fun, frivolous events, like the imagery on it is just so delightful and circus oriented. And because I have such a background in theater and a little bit of circus, it it adds to the layers that it adds to the layers because I can
Absolutely.
talk about the backstage, and it's also just a really beautiful deck in. Oh yeah, this is a fun one. I love that the sort of bodice that our tattooed individual is wearing is covered in spider webs,
Okay.
because that for me ties in the aspect of air. One of the things that I love about the suit of wands and fire is that it is the one element that is made up of two elements. You have to have air and earth in to have fire. And if either of those things are out of balance, then your fire is going to be out of balance. The ability that we have to create the world, to build the dreams, to activate all of those things, to take the next steps, to save the family, to save the family, to save the animals, to have a really potent transformative ritual. Like, if those things aren't in balance, then we don't have that ability.
Sure.
We have to bring that
One of the
into balance.
one of the correspondences for this card is the air in it's the sun in Aries, or the beginning of spring. So there's like that we're really
Right here.
beginning to accomplish, to achieve, to open up, to and I and so to me, it's like the best aspects of the emperor, someone who is looking to expand, but they're collaborating with others, right? They're just not sitting on their throne and standing their own ground and dominance, but they're actually out, um,
Yeah,
being a part of the world, so to speak. And I like the idea that this is the beginning of spring, right? Or just starting
totally.
a
We are,
little, and we're here, right?
it
The
is,
two of
it is
us.
quite synchronous.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So tell me your take on the shadow side or reversals. Do you use reversals when you shuffle, or do you just consider both aspects of the cards?
I am in the consider both aspects of the card
Okay.
camp, when and seeing how the story of the cards unfolds in comparison to the other cards around it, and of course, most importantly, in comparison, and not in comparison, um, listening to what it is that the querent has asked.
Mhm.
Because if I've asked a question about um, future travel and future plans, and you pull the Three of Wands from the Waite Smith deck, that has one aspect of answers to it, but if we pull that same Wade Smith card and the question is around like my health, that's a very different answer. So, and I've lost track of your question.
So we're going to talk about the shadow side of the card,
Reversals and
right?
shadows,
Yes. So
right? So for me, it also depends on the deck,
mhm.
because pulling up the Wise Fool here for a moment, if this card comes out reversed, the first things that come to mind are stopping yourself from taking the next steps in the journey of not trusting the people that you are journeying with, that you're building and dreaming and manifesting with for whatever reasons. And like for me, a lot of times when reversals come into play, it has more to do with lack of trust, that the querent doesn't trust that that energy is actually there. And with the Three of Wands, there would be this sense of not trusting that you actually have the energy, you actually have the vision, you actually have the drive and the desire and the capability to do the work necessary to manifest the vision. And sometimes that can be because we need to put more work into what it is that we are doing. Sometimes it and this is where the illustration is really important, because if the if this Tarot Neocolonial de los Americas came out, like this person is literally walking through a river or a body of water with a child on their shoulders going to another place. So there's this sense of travel being necessary in some capacity, where Tarot of the She, Emily Carding, if this comes up and is reversed, then my question is, well, have you done ritual around it? Have you done the divination? Have you spoken with the land? Have you spoken with place? Have you spoken with your guides or the fae, or whoever, whatever that is important to you? Have you done that spiritual work and component to it? Or, and then depending on what their answer is, then maybe part of being stuck is doing too much ritual work and being like, okay, you've done that, now just take the next step and do it. Or you haven't done that work, and do that work and see what they have to say. Like, listen, because the rods are also the spine, and the spine is our conduit between the divine above and the divine below. And so, like, listening for that inner core knowing. And that's because a lot of times when I'm reading with shadow cards, there's the question of how do you flip that energy? Does the querent want, and of course always with consent to the querent, does the querent want to flip or transform that energy? And because rods are the suit of fire, and for me that is the spine, that is the one of the first questions that I always ask when thinking about, well, how do you want to shift this energy? One tactic is always to come back to the spine, is always to come back to alignment, and to tie it into what you were saying earlier, Rosemary, of the Ace of Wands, that's that initial spark. Like, what was that initial spark? and bringing that back to center. And maybe the querent finds, or yourself, if you're doing this for personal work, you find that that spark has actually ignited something else. And the travel and the travel and the path and the way to go are different. Like, we don't know what this person with their back to us is going to do next. They may turn around and walk right at us versus walking towards the water. We don't know. They may find a slide and like slide down. Like, there's I love, one of the things that I enjoy reminding my querents of, and myself of, is that these cards are snapshots in a way. We don't know what's out of frame. And if there's anything that this like YouTube online, like selfie point of like world has given us, is like, y'all don't know what's on either side of me. You can imagine what's out there, but you don't actually know until I shift the camera a little bit. And that's the same thing here. Like, tarot, we get to just shift that camera a little bit and engage our imaginations in that way.
Well, it's interesting that sometimes these cards, as I've been pulling them randomly to do this project,
Mhm.
they speak to me in their upright form and sometimes in their shadow side. And as
Mhm.
you began talking, it dawned on me that, yeah, this has totally been a shadow side week for me with this card. And some of the things that came up,
With the Three of Wands, you mean?
yes, yes. And
How so?
so in some of my cards, I've tried to incorporate imagery that equates both
Uh-huh.
the shadow and the positive aspects of the card in one, because I'm not a person who shuffles reversals into my deck. I'm a very careful shuffler, and so I tend to read um both energies depending on the
Mhm.
context and that kind of thing. Some of the things that I came up in my reading were lacking of fulfillment or perspective.
Mhm.
Um,
So those were things that you were dealing with yourself this week?
well, I don't know. I'm not sure, but it definitely I related to what you were saying at the very beginning of your conversation
Mm.
of you know basically need to put in effort, right? And not feeling like the effort is paying off. Even though I'm at card 75 of 78, I'm like, is it worth
Ooh,
being
we're
traveling? And
75.
I've started booking
That's
speaking
a good
engagements, and
number.
I'm like, yeah, is this gonna pay? Is this paying off? So some other aspects that come up are like unrealistic plans. Like, there's a reason that you haven't achieved anything at this point.
Yeah.
It could be because you rushed in too soon, or
Mhm.
it's simply a delay before you actually
Mhm.
achieve.
Yep.
Maybe you're dreaming too small, um,
Yeah.
so to speak, or being
Or
careless.
or maybe your dreams are butting up with the dreams of somebody else, and it is it has yet to it had like, in the one of the things that the Lua Tarot, like, draws out for me, and I don't actually know if this is, I don't know if this is historically accurate for whatever the original 1800s wood engraver was doing, and the, um, book that Marie Bento, gives with the deck doesn't go into the specific, um, story of this particular engraver, but the story that I see in this card is one of the first Indigenous Americans seeing those trade ships that, of course, led to the horrible genocide that is a foundation of this, United States and Turtle Island. And the our person on the water standing, their dream and vision is so different than the dream and vision of the colonizers coming through. And so, in terms of what you were saying about dreaming too small, or like, I feel like there can also be the possibility of two dreams being in conflict with each other, and which dream ends up winning.
Sure.
Or yeah, hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at what I did. We're going to start by
Yeah.
looking at the two because we talked about the two several times
Mhm.
and even showed the Smith Wade and how
Yeah.
the difference between them. But this was originally what I came up with for the two.
Ooh,
Interesting side note: Kate and I met at Northwest Terrace Symposium, and at StarCon, I was showing the images I had done to her in a um, meetup during the event,
yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
that's how she ended up here. But also, she brought my attention to the fact that I need a second pair of eyes on my deck because she caught two errors on cards I thought were finished with just first glance. So, Amy from Strength Reverse 2 is here today, and Gerald from Terra Stash are going to be my second pair of eyes on the deck. I'll be posting that this week for you guys to go ahead and start looking at the first 75 cards and see what mistakes I've made. Um, but this was my two of wands, which was actually one of the better received cards online, at least. And I incorporated my logo because, like I was talking about earlier with Crowley, the idea of um, really the ace, two, and three being the triangle that supports everything else, being that birth of our great work, our passion. And I did it in black and white rather than the full color version because it's just the beginning of the idea, right?
Yeah.
But
The
this was what
outline.
the two looked like. I kept it inside. I did the whole looking out over the water thing, which is a theme in my life and in this deck,
Oh,
for those who've seen it. And and there's our glow, which is always got to be there, right?
yep.
Some of the
Locally.
cards.
Locally. That was the when I was first learning, that was the key word. That was my little like hook in to the Two of Wands, was think globally, act locally.
Right, yeah.
Remember those ripple effects.
So for those who have never watched this series, basically I've tried to create imagery that reminds me of moments in my life, and in many cases, I have started with the Smith Wade imagery, sometimes with the Marseille or the Thoth, and then built upon it to incorporate my own life and experiences, and that's kind of how my process has been. And so with the three, when I
Mm,
first thought of it, I was like, yeah, okay, let's pull them outside of this building that they're in, where those mountains are still there, the water is still there, but
boat
and
is still
and
there.
we'll, and we'll put the boat's still there. But for me, the thing that I equated as I thought about all these meanings was with getting mail, particularly when I was in high school and college, because that's how everything was communicated, right? So, like, that's when you knew whether you were successful or not. That's how I knew if I got my first job out of college. That's how I knew I got into college. That's how I knew got awards or anything. It came in the mailbox. So there was this aspect of, okay, am I waiting for my ship to come in, or am I sending out the deck and hoping for success, right? Kind of thing. And so the mailbox just seemed appropriate for me here, not for a message necessarily, but for to hear about that success, right? Or to actually put that thing out into the world. I had to send all of my applications out through the mail. I have to, the decks go out to people in the mail. And so then we'll find out if it's successful or not, if people like it, that kind of thing, which is why I went that way. Um, And I don't know if that resonates with anybody or not. That idea of a mailbox being the source of your ship coming in or going out, as it were. But um, I I had a lot of trouble finding a good mailbox because I'm using Creative Commons imagery. This was the other option, and my first thought was, okay, do I want the flag up, sending something out, or is the flag down? I'm coming to look for something, right? And to see if my ship has come in.
So for me, I resonate more with the first mailbox, and it it doesn't actually for me have to do with the flag or not, it has to do with the shape. Because with this one, it's a very clear box shape. And so that's 4 points. And one of the things that I love about your design choices with this 3 is that you have a triangle shape for the boat, you have a triangle shape for the mountains, and the individual's legs make a third very clear triangle, and those 3 are triangulated with each other. And so the mailbox being square for me is a bit of uh premonition is not the right word, but like future,
It's a hint to what's
a
next,
hint
right? It's a hint, right? Yes.
to the
Uh,
4 of rods next. And
right.
so like I like that. um
Yeah, I actually I don't like the way this mailbox shows up in this image. I don't think it kind of blends in too much for
mhm,
me. So that's something I probably would have to play with. Jennifer or Jenna from Jennifer Ball's Witch House had said that she preferred this one because she felt like it went more with the kind of um, classiness I was trying to present with this image from the 2.
mhm,
And I actually like that this stands out more. Perhaps I can make this one darker, and then it will stand out a little more, perhaps. Um, because I do like the idea of the flag being up,
mhm.
i.e., putting yourself out there, right? You had the plan, now you're putting it out into the world, and uh, whether you
There are a lot of there are a lot of people that aren't gonna have any idea what the flag on a mailbox is
right,
for
right.
or
Well, but see,
about.
and that kind of relates it back to my life, right? Because this is something that I have dealt with
Yeah,
most of my
totally.
life until,
And
yeah,
then it also becomes one of those lovely, like, um,
throwback things.
tour guide things, but also, like, the devil is in the details, like, the specificity matters, you
Right.
know? And so, like, it becomes one of those little things that make your deck and your story unique.
Yeah. Yeah. I did go ahead and decide to put the logo back there because after I went back and looked at the 2 and why I included it before,
Mhm.
that hint to the great work and to your passion, then I decided that should be there.
I
Because
agree.
I did
Yeah.
intentionally use the same person
Mhm.
in the 2 and the 3. I also the mountain equates it with the emperor in this deck. And and then of course the whole scene really is directly from the 2. So yeah, I'm
Mhm.
happy with it. I think I probably will go back and play with maybe make it see if I can darken this up a little bit so it stands out more like this one.
Yeah.
And then of course put the logo there, but I'm generally pretty happy with it. And
Mhm.
Thank you everybody for popping in. Don't forget to go back and watch from the beginning because you'll want to. Kate said some amazing things today, and actually, right now we're going to give her opportunity to let us know what's going on with her and how you can work with her in the future.
Yeah. So, Best way to stay in touch with me is on my mailing list, grouptarot.com. And I am very excited. October 1st through 7th, I am co-facilitating a writers and creatives retreat in New Mexico with Rio Bajo Rio. And it is all inclusive meals, lodging, supplies, massage, hot springs, time in the community, forest dancing and hikes. And it's registration is open for my mailing list, but it's not going live for the general and my partner's mailing list. But it's not going live for the general public until the 20th on the equinox. And there are only 10 spots because we literally have this whole small B&B style motel all to ourselves. And there's this like huge saloon room for if you're an embodied mover or dancer, you can, work in there. We'll be able to have ritual and story sharings there as well. And then everybody has their private room to be able to go and write or draw or paint or, whatever, and close the door and really be able to focus in and get your creative projects done. And so for y'all listening, if you go to grouptarot.com/retreat, you may all have early access. And as I said, they're only, and at this point, they're only 8. There are fewer spots than 10. I don't know what the exact numbers are off the top of my head, but there are fewer spots than 10. And 10 is the total because that's what the space will hold. So, and that also keeps it in a really sweet place to be able to form community for the week and be able to have our away time and have our together time. And I'm so excited for it. I love this particular part of New Mexico. I love the folks at Rio Bajo Rio, like Zephyr and I have known each other since our Portland since he was in Portland, and like it's just so sweet. It is just so sweet. And the people who are interested are such fabulous spirits. And there is this notion that I'm really glad is changing, and in part it is changing because of people like Zephyr, where there's this idea within the queer community that we're only accepted within cities and urban areas, and we are discriminated against a lot more in rural areas. And this retreat changes that a little bit, because there is some glorious queer community in this little small town in New Mexico, and like this potent land. And yeah, I'm so, like, Zephyr and I are so excited to be sharing it with everybody who comes. So excited. So yeah, grouptarot.com/retreat, and you may get your spot early.
Well,
Yeah,
Wonderful. Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Next week, Maria Alves Hernando is going to be here from
Mhm.
Sibley's Tarot and the World Divination Association. And
And what card are the two of you going to be chatting about?
right, that's what we're going to work on. So, interesting fact, the last 5 cards, even though I've been randomly drawing from my original deck,
Uh-huh.
um, ended up being one from each suit and major arcana. And so last week we finished the cups. This week we have finished the wands.
We are
And
the completion of the wands.
yes, yeah.
Yes, I love that.
Right. And now we get to choose what we're going to finish next. So I have 3 cards. You can decide how you want to choose.
3.
3. Okay. So now I guess that 1, 2, 3, or is it 1, 2, 3?
From
One,
from right to left.
right to left. Okay, so that's
1,
this
2, 3.
card. It is the 2 of Pentacles. So we'll be finishing Pentacles next.
Right.
Interesting side note, I've already done this card because I had an idea for it that I wanted to use. But it may change as I review all of my material and studies and all of that kind of thing. But I'll be emailing Maria this afternoon and letting her know. It'll be the 2 of Pentacles. Side note, since we're already talking about it, this is my least favorite depiction of the 2 of Pentacles. I'm just not down with the juggler. I just really am not. But
That's fair.
yeah, we'll talk more about that next week and how we balance those coins in other decks. So thank you so much for being here, Kate. I really appreciate
You're
it.
welcome, Rosemary. Thank you for inviting me.
Patience during this kind of crazy week for me mentally. And I look forward to seeing you again and perhaps working with you on something. So
I certainly hope so. And I do. I love your deck. And I love in particular the silhouette aspect of it. Like I love that the backgrounds are clear and specific, but that then the individual is in silhouette, and that portal nature that just design gives, as well as any person literally being able to place themselves in that story, is just, I love that. I love that about your deck.
well, thank you. It was so initially when I started this project, I was simply trying to muck up Creative Commons imagery as to what I wanted an artist to portray.
Yeah.
And after I got like 4 or 5 cards in, people were like, "Oh, are we going to be able to get a copy of it?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, I probably will have to work a little harder to create the imagery then." And I stuck with the silhouettes because it's very hard to find Creative Commons imagery that kind of blends together and goes together across a deck, but more so of people than anything. And so I just started turning any image that was the right shape and body position into a silhouette, so that it would work. And people have responded to that as well. I've tried to be as diverse as possible with the silhouettes. I have some that are various body types. Some appear more non-binary than others, but there were some where I specifically chose to use images that were female or were male, right? And so and there are children in various cards. In fact, there's one card in the swords I'm still unhappy with. I think if I made it a child, I would be happier with it. And so I think I have maybe 3 or 4 cards I want to revisit that just aren't sitting quite right for me. For various reasons. But then at the same time, I've looked at these cards for so long, I'm like, let's just print it. Let's just print it. Let's just make it happen. So.
I'll deal with a second edition later.
All right, guys, everybody have a great week. And until next time, good journeys.
Nice to meet you, sunflowers.